Bitcoin today. Not Bitcoin yesterday. This is Bitcoin today. Bitcoin today. Not Bitcoin last week. This is Bitcoin today. Bitcoin today. This is Bitcoin now. And let's go ahead. Going. This is Bitcoin today. Bitcoin now. Don't look now, but Bitcoin is on fire. This thing is you have to find something that you can trust and a trustless world, which is Bitcoin. You know, it is a asset class that protects you. The U.S. federal government's on unstable fiscal path, and the U.S. federal government's on unstable fiscal path. You do not sell your Bitcoin. Sell your Bitcoin. You do not sell your Bitcoin. Sell your Bitcoin. This is Bitcoin today. Bitcoin today. Not Bitcoin today. Bitcoins. Not Bitcoin today. Bitcoins. Not crypto today. Bitcoin. Bitcoin today. Bitcoin today. Bitcoin today. Today. Bitcoin today. No. Not today. Yeah. By the way, just Bitcoin today. You do not sell your Bitcoin. Sell your Bitcoin. You do not sell your Bitcoin. Sell your Bitcoin. You do not sell your Bitcoin. Sell your Bitcoin. You do not sell your Bitcoin. Sell your Bitcoin. Don't look now, but Bitcoin is on fire. This thing is keep going. You have to find something that you can trust in a trustless world, which is Bitcoin. You know, it is a asset class that protects you. The U.S. federal government's on unstable fiscal path, and the U.S. federal government. The U.S. federal government is on an unstable fiscal path. Good
TikTok.
morning.
TikTok.
Yeah. Yes, sirs. How are you, Terrence? Cosmo?
Yesterday was a
Mm.
really good space. It was a solid space, and Cosmo was DMing me. We were like, "Why is today's space so great? Like the conversation was
Dark
incredible." And we
side.
were like, "Well, yeah, Dark Side was hosting. That always is. That's always the fundamental reason that we have a good space." But we realized it was because you weren't there.
Oh yeah. So we just
Got
have to
him.
figure out which one is more important here, that Dark Side was hosting or that I'm never there on Mondays. Maybe both. Matt, how are you?
It's always a good day in Bitcoin. Good morning, good
It
afternoon,
is.
everybody.
Good afternoon. Can't wait to meet you next week. 7 more sleeps. Hey, should we just talk about the tentative plan a little bit? Since, or while the room is filling up, maybe. Party night, we're getting quite a number of responses. So the mutual decision, I believe this was your idea, Terrence, was to put the money that we have donated towards drinks for the ladies. So Cosmo is handling all of the fine details and the money. So he's going to be the one who. Cosmo, do you want to chime in on this? Because I don't have a clue what's going on.
Yeah. The plan is I'm gonna get all the money, delete my account, and run. So you guys won't ever see me again.
He's going to be rich. Oh, wait. How far can
Yeah.
you
I
get on
think.
$1,500? I'm kidding.
Yeah. The way the venue has a specific way they want to do it, and I'll just let you guys know there because it has to stay a secret. So
No,
when
that's
we
perfect. Yeah.
yeah.
So we put the right man on the job. This has been a process where it was like an idea, like, hey, we all need to get together and put faces to. Well, I guess a lot of people are actually adding their real face now, which is cool. But to these anon weird pictures on here that we come and hang out all the time on these spaces. So it started out as that, and then we kicked around a few ideas that fell dead, and then Eric picked up the ball, found us a venue, found us a party, and then kind of tossed that back over to Terrence and Cosmo and myself, and then we were able to keep in touch with the promoter and the venue, and then I think Cosmo's done a great job since. So
I have a pretty good feeling that it's going to be a good time, and there's going to be not a lot of work involved for us, so we can just focus on having a great time with all the fellow plebs there. So,
Well,
thoughts,
you
Tim?
realize that by making the drinks free for the ladies, it's really a gift for the guys.
Well, I don't think a lot of people realize, but this group of folks seems to have, as far as Bitcoin goes, the largest capita of ladies to males that I've noticed. I actually scanned through the list and noticed a lot of ladies' names on there, which I find wonderful in the Bitcoin space because oftentimes it is 90+% males. So it'll be nice to see ladies at this party. So excited about that.
Is that because of Tall, Dark, and Handsome? You've got two of them?
Yeah, Luke and Cosmo and Matt. So three, actually. Three tall, dark, and handsomes will be there, ladies. So there he is. He's waving. What have I missed this weekend? I had a great weekend.
They had the what's it called, cloture vote or whatever
Oh, yeah.
on the stablecoin bill. So it's exiting cloture, which means I guess at some point they were filibustering it, and you need 60 votes in the Senate to close the filibuster. So they got their 60 votes. So from what I understand, and someone can correct me because I don't understand legal proceedings as well as some, but we should get a vote on the actual bill in the Senate in the next 2 or 3 days. I think they have 30 hours after the first 24 hours to vote on it. I don't know why, but that's just the deal.
This is one of those things where I feel like one of the people in the crowd that doesn't have a clue what's going on in the game or whatever it is that I'm watching, but I look around and see people around me cheering, and I think, am I supposed to be cheering too? So I stand up and cheer, but don't know if it's good or bad.
Yeah, that's how I felt too. I don't think I understand the bill well enough to be like, oh, is this exactly what we need? Or is this like a Trojan horse? Because from what I understand, all it is essentially like legal guidelines around what you can and can't do with stable coins. They have some interesting things there, like if you're under $10 billion, you're not under some sort of federal jurisdiction. You have to like there's a bunch of interesting stipulations, and someone probably understands this better than I do, but it's worth a read.
Yeah, it'd be interesting. I mean, it sounds like stable coins are going to be an essential potential evil. So I think in my book, the verdict is still out on a lot of these and how they'll play out. And it seems like, I mean, even with what we're seeing with Tether, and you see the meme of, the I forgot exactly how it goes, but basically we're bailing out one boat and dumping it into the other boat, and it's oftentimes just not doing any good long
Yeah, I
term.
think
So
I think it kind of feels like a necessary evil, though. It feels like an evil to us, but I do think that it's good for people outside of the United States who, I guess, are looking for access to, a better currency than the ones that they're currently using. Because, realistically, the U.S. dollar is better than just about everything else out there, and it's good for them to have the opportunity to escape their terrible currency. But again, like, what's the cost in terms of surveillance and things like that?
yeah, true. I think I like what I'm hearing from Darkside and others regarding the Bitbond thing. I think that's probably something that's going to take off big time. But anyway, I'm a little bit out of my league when it comes to a lot of these things. I haven't put in the time personally to go down the rabbit hole on those things. But anyway, good morning, Tomer. How are you, sir?
Oh, I'm good. Good morning. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you. How did your space go this weekend?
Oh, it went really well. I think I mentioned it yesterday, so I won't repeat. But it with that's the subject was emotional intelligence. What is it? How do you develop it? What's it good for? And how does it apply to our discussions of Bitcoin? So it turned out to be a really good conversation. I'd say it was for sure in the top 5 of the Bitcoin Philosophy Sundays that have been held since I started
Oh,
doing this.
nice. I need to go listen to that because I could use some work in that area as I'm struggling with emotional intelligence and probably even more so emotional maturity when it comes to dealings with some of the folks in these spaces. So it's the back and forths behind the scenes and DMs that I'm really struggling with. I think I should just
Yeah,
shut them off
you know
sometimes.
what? It's so it'll be a good listen. I'm not going to say it's going to fix everything for you, but it's a good discussion and it's a good listen. And I've decided I'm really going to focus a whole bunch of these on the field of epistemology, which is a big fancy word which I won't use often, but it's like good critical thinking skills, the art of thinking, how we know what we know, and how to think about what we know. Because I think a big part of the challenge here, and as you point out, it comes up in these spaces a lot, is the tools of getting to the truth are like there's a lot of people who desire to get to the truth, and there's a lot of people who are genuinely struggling because they don't teach you that in school now, right? None of us, well, I shouldn't say none of us, but the overwhelming majority of us did not get courses in reason, courses in logic, courses in the art of thinking. We were told to write essays, which were meant to be thoughtful pieces to help us get to the truth. But we didn't enjoy it, and there wasn't the craft of critical thinking around all of these things. So I think bringing these things forward, bring them forward in a forum where they're open for discussion and question, help people learn them more as opposed to a lecture format. And these spaces, as a great example, are seriously wanting of people who know how to formulate a thought and express it clearly, not how to formulate an insult or to get all emotional and throw a tantrum at somebody else who they disagree with, none of which actually make a point. And we're at a time where there's a lot of people coming here and asking questions and wanting to learn stuff, and then they witness a bunch of immature kids arguing who aren't really kids, who are adults, but they're behaving like kids, and it's not helpful. So we got to get to the point, at some point where at least uh, there's more than one or two people in the audience who are in control of their emotions and control of their thoughts and expressing things clearly and rationally, rather than emotionally. And I feel this way and I want it to be that way. And you're stupid if you're disagreeing with me. Like, that's just a waste of time and space. And it shows not the best. It doesn't show the best of us. It doesn't show what we're actually capable of. And so it's time, for me, as part of this revolution, to have a renaissance of critical thought and the skills around it.
Beautiful. That was just, Tomer has these zingers sometimes. Speaking of schools, a guy who taught at the school I went to, pink shirt guy. Good morning.
Hey, good morning, guys. Really appreciate the thoughts there, Tomer. My question that immediately pops into my head would be how to begin to value those conversations and to value that truth. It seems like engagement farming being what it is, and the incentives for people to blow things up and to argue and to fight and to have those gotcha moments. The incentives to do those things and to behave that way are very strong, especially on X in general. And people bring that into spaces, I think. And the question for me becomes how to not only begin to value what the truth is. I mean, some people hold on to their own ideologies so tightly that they don't actually value the truth. They value being right, or they value being validated, or they value not having to concede a point. So that would be the first thing, is to think about how to encourage wanting truth, and then secondarily, how to bring that out in a forum like this where we can have rational thought and critical thinking and seek to build. One thing Lauren and I talk about all the time is like all souls are the same, right? Souls are the same. It doesn't matter if you're a philosopher or if you're an investor or if you're a trader or if you're a hardcore Bitcoiner in still cold storage. We come together in these forums, and all the souls are the same. And how to speak to the souls of people and how to engage them at the core of what they want out of life, and how to as cliche as it sounds, or sappy as it sounds, really just love on each other. And that's where I live. I live in a my bio used to say, I don't know if it still does, I think I might have taken it down, but just common sense maximalist, like optimize for what you're trying to achieve. And so I think the world could use a little more kindness, and that's where I start. Would definitely welcome more insights and thoughts into how to value the truth and how to create space to bring more of it up.
Yeah. Well, I'm not going to try to answer all those questions all at once because it's very deep and purposeful. But I think that there's an arc that many people go through, especially those who become genuine lovers of truth at the end of the day and want to learn the tools by which they can explore and discover more truth and validate what is being told to them as truth or not, or close to the truth, but within limits or in a particular context. I think when one starts down this path of learning the tools of critical thought, one kind of arc that isn't a direct path, is that start to they start to want to win arguments because now they're armed with all these tools of pointing out the falsehoods of somebody else's arguments and this and that. And the point of learning critical thought is not winning arguments, but it is discovering the truth and validating the truth. And it's it's hard to resist the temptation to satisfy your ego and tell somebody that they're wrong because they made some kind of fallacy or something like that, when in fact what's called for is a harsher, more critical look at the ideas that you're holding and espousing, and the need to sharpen them. But you're like we're that'll be a nice place for us to get to in a lot of these conversations, because mostly it's I know, trust me, or I know you're stupid. It and it feels like we're in a schoolyard of kids who don't have the skills to have an intellectual discussion, and so a proper intellectual discussion. So that for me is a big part of this, and I think I don't have all the answers as to how to make it happen. For me, this is about rising above the temptations that this platform gives. Like, I don't care. At the end of the day, if you think about it, however many followers you have, it's worthless, right? Especially if they follow you for the wrong reasons. And now you have to become this character that entertains them and doesn't tell the truth and doesn't advance your own knowledge or theirs. You've just locked yourself in a trap with all these other people who are following you for the wrong reason. So you've got to be able to rise above uh, the worthless rewards of popularity, because it doesn't actually get you anything, and at
Tomer,
least
can I give you the pushback on that? Because I
yeah,
think
sure.
you're looking at it from the individual perspective. And I think my account is like me as BitPetro is exactly what you're talking about, but I'm a business. And if you want to get to know Jonathan Cohn, come out to one of the meetups and you can shake my hand. But you know, I'm representing myself and my business. I mean, my business is me. So like when I step out into the world, like this is what you get. So I think part of that is also recognizing that we're in an age of branding and self branding and all of this stuff. And so if you are aware enough to maybe not work for the man and have your own business, I kind of have to disagree with you. This platform is more than just a bunch of followers. You can actually leverage this to do some good.
Well, no, but I don't think you're disagreeing with me, or I didn't communicate well. I'm saying you you shouldn't misuse this platform to get followers for the wrong reasons. So if you're saying to do it for good, I think we're generally aligned, right? Like if you choose to do, I'm going to stop using the word you because I don't think it disqualifies. If one chooses to to make their living off of fooling other people, making promises that that you don't actually deliver on, or that nobody can validate whether or not you actually sold them the good deal. You're a snake oil salesman, not you, right? Someone's a snake oil salesman and they sell something and they say, don't you feel better now that you've drank it? And the person's like, well, I'm not really sure, but you've got no way of knowing. That individual is is succeeding off of fraud, our ambiguity. And one of the things that I think that I was going to get around to, that this space is pretty good at, is actually over a reasonably short test of time, like a year or two, calling out who was wrong. whether they were intentionally wrong, like committing fraud, or whether they just had a bad model of the ideas that they were espousing, time rather quickly proves out who who's right and who's wrong here, or what's right and what's wrong. And if you're in the space long enough and you're following long enough, you can also get an explanation, like why was that person wrong? Were they, and a lot of the common things are they're predicting that there's a risk-free way to earn money, or a really quick way to earn money risk-free, or that some complicated thing that was really hard to explain, hard to understand, wasn't really clear that they could explain it or understand it, was something that they were advocating that people put a lot of their own money in, whether they're explicitly offering financial advice or not. And I just think, if you see enough of it, you don't actually need a lot of critical thinking skills. You just learn from observation of a pattern, right? Which is the pattern that someone who can't explain themselves clearly tends to turn out to be wrong because they didn't really understand why they were being clear about something in the first place. But I think at the bigger picture, to try to bring it back to what I think you were saying, is like, what if someone's going to do business with BitPetro, what are they getting? Are they getting an individual who's truthful and forthright and admits to their mistakes and corrects them and owns up to things? Or are they getting someone who's an emotional raver who needs to be right at all costs, even when they're wrong, and puts other people down if they're wrong? I don't know you terribly well, but you seem to be in the camp of much more of the former than the latter, which is why I delight in having you on spaces. But that's not the norm of what we are getting everywhere here. We're getting people who are genuinely naive and wanting to learn. We get people who are overplaying what they know and their certainty over what's going to happen. And we get people who are more humble and trying to put together their knowledge with the knowledge of other people, to share knowledge that they have, and gain some knowledge from what other people have. And look, the whole thing's healthy, right? That's the human experience. But when we've gotten so far, I feel like our civilization in general, and these discussions as well, have gotten too far into people being in that category where they're trying to be right, not 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 truthfully correct, but to win rhetorical arguments, to win influence over individuals that isn't earned, that isn't valid influence over other individuals. And at the end of the day, you can't reason to somebody to stop doing that. They have to think for themselves enough to realize that there's nothing in it for them that's fundamental by going down a path of being a pusher of a false idea, because sooner or later that false idea will be revealed as being false, and they won't be an influencer anymore. They'll be an ashamed has-been. I'm trying not to talk too much, but Lauren, you really opened a can of worms here.
He tends to do that with that big hole below his nose. He doesn't know what's coming out of it. But this is actually really good. And Tomer, I'm sure you would agree. I, this is what reminds me of why I like Bitcoin, why I gravitate to Bitcoin, because all there is truth. You can't try to falsify, or you can't try to have a different narrative, or you just won't be, you're just not part of, like, there is only truth. There is no other choice. You either accept the truth or you don't, because everything is verifiable and transparent, and it just teaches you about doing the work, verifying the work. They've done the work, not just going by what someone says or who they are or who their followers are. um, and I think it's kind of sets a good example for us to, in a sense, to be more like Bitcoin.
Actually, I kind
Yeah,
of disagree with you, Terrence. I think truth is a lot more complicated than that. I think in some ways it's easy to like process and understand and talk out, but I think in a broader way, truth is kind of complicated.
yeah. I think Bitcoin sets a good example, but it doesn't guarantee, like, you we can all know the truth about the state of the blockchain, right? We can all agree that the first block, the Genesis block is the Genesis block, and what is a block hash is, and the most recent block is what it is, and what transactions are in it, and then all of this is attained through effort to validate things. And so that sets a good example that that there is such a thing as truth, but we're all of our minds are very different. Whereas all of our nodes run the exact same code, or generally, maybe some of us run different filters than others, but they don't. They all run the same consensus algorithm. Each of our minds is wildly different, and some of us will better understand Bitcoin through a metaphor of energy, of a material, some it's digital energy. For some, it's digital gold. For some, and all of these things resonate with some true metaphor, and then they also have their limitation. And this is where thinking hard about something really helps you understand it better. One of the things that I think is a very useful tack to go is to try to understand Bitcoin for what it is, not in the context of what the fiat realm is, and certainly not to get caught up in, and this was a little bit of the discussion I was involved in yesterday here, not to get caught up in the realm of fiat instruments that are derived from fiat entities taking some kind of possession of Bitcoin and doing all kinds of interesting things with it. That's a different thing from understanding what Bitcoin is. And again, I state this as a belief, but a rather strongly held belief, that if you manage to put yourself into that world of holding Bitcoin for the long term, accumulating it, and not getting involved in fiat games, you're going to have more peace and wisdom and comfort in your life, because you're not waking up every morning checking 16 different instruments, rebalancing, weighing your portfolio in and out of these things, being subject to all sorts of risks that are attached to these things that don't exist in Bitcoin, and are only additive risks. So and that requires letting go. It requires starting with a clean slate, a beginner's mind of, well, what is money, right? And not jumping to the conclusion, well, money is that which is issued by the government or the central bank. Money is something that people accumulate to exchange with others for other goods and services, for other things of value that people will exchange for it. And when you get to that, then you can start to evaluate, well, how is Bitcoin money, and where does it fall short, or where does it come out strong in this situation? And people then eventually can have a really good grip on understanding what it is that's happening here with Bitcoin becoming recognized by lots of other people as money, because that's one of the other criteria of money. So there's all this recursive effect happening in addition to just what is money. Like, if there's no human being. Yeah.
I just want to
Go ahead.
jump in here real quick. I'm sorry to sidetrack you, but I think that one of two examples. A couple of weeks ago, I saw somebody that was upset with something that British Hodl was saying. In the thread, he said, "What's this mofo's name?" Sure enough, someone comes up and they post the guy's real name and show a picture of him when he was a little younger. I was listening to Scott Melker the other day, and he's like, "When I go to events, I've got a team of security. I've got people watching out for me. I don't do this. I don't do that." In Bitcoin, there is a dissatisfaction with just being wealthy. What comes to play to me is ego. And a lot of times when I'm listening to podcasts, I try to figure out, I'm like, what is the goal of some of the podcasters? And just like anything, it is America's biggest export: fame, personal attention, and even money doesn't even have to come with it, just the attention. But it seems so.
Well,
It's difficult,
well,
man. It's
there
weird.
are two kinds of people. I don't want to dispute that there are people who show up and have their moment in the spotlight, getting in the spotlight by making audacious claims, and you know, and often steering people in the wrong direction. I don't want. I just think your generalization in Bitcoin, ego is important. it is for some, and it is less important for others. And I think depending on which podcast you're listening to and referring to, I mean, you have podcasts of individuals who are committed to education and understanding themselves, and the hosts aren't perfect because nobody is perfect, but they're really committed to it. And then you've got the guys on YouTube with their mouth open saying, is Bitcoin about to crash 98%, or is Bitcoin about to go to 500,000 tomorrow? Those are the ego chasers, the clout chasers, the sponsor chasers. And I think people who are in Bitcoin for any amount of time relatively quickly learn there's not much to be said for the value of those of giving your time and attention to those people. But the question then becomes like, well, what do you give your time and attention to, and what are your goals in learning and understanding Bitcoin? And if your goal, I think this is one of the really powerful lessons that takes time to learn, but that you do learn in Bitcoin. If your goal is popularity and fame, that's a very hard goal to achieve in the first place. It's hard to attain, and one really questions what value it is, because you look at the most famous people in the world, they're trying to hide from their fans. Right? It's not all reward. Being seen as famous and walking down the street is a burden as much as it is a blessing. Satoshi, I think we can all agree, did not do this for his ego, because we don't know who he is. He gave up all the fame. And so even within the story, the Genesis story and mythos of Bitcoin, you see the example of its creator, who did not do this for fame. He also didn't do it for personal wealth, and he didn't do it for personal power. He did it because he believed in creating something valuable and true to the world, even though the cost of doing that meant not being famous, not being rich, and not being powerful, so that Bitcoin could have this immaculate conception, which required that he make those sacrifices.
Right,
Let's
and
set. Let's.
agreed. But just real quick, did you guys look to see what kind of listeners you had when British and Fred were when they're having their big argument the other day? Did your listenership spike? Did you notice that?
Yeah, it was like
Yeah,
1400.
I didn't become richer, more powerful, or more famous by virtue of that, though, or achieve anything. Right? It's important to focus on the right things in life, right? Like you can get a huge listener count if we were to invite all sorts of people and have them fight it out, and that's highly entertaining, and it draws big numbers, but it doesn't bring out the truth. And
And it's
having
not
things like,
necessarily the people that we need to educate.
yeah, yeah. So it's just like it's important. Like if what what you presume is valuable, like if you presume holding a space and having 4,000 listeners is more important, regardless of content, than having 200 listeners and having a good conversation, which the 200, or a majority of the 200, walk away with something that improves their lives, you're pursuing a different goal than having 4,000 people who basically like ate a marshmallow right away and got a bit of a sugar rush, but nothing of value long term. So I think that's what I'm trying to emphasize. It's like we don't need everybody in the world to be fully enlightened and everything else, but for people who want to pursue enlightenment and want to pursue understanding, there are there's a starting spot. It doesn't have to be one particular spot, but there are tools that you need to have in order to be able to do that, which you don't need to have if you're just going to watch two people who are both wrong fight over which of them is more wrong, right? So it's like it's different. But I think that the longer you are in Bitcoin, or the more intriguing the topic is, the more inclined you are to say, I'd like to do this work, right? And this is one of the phenomenon that we see, where we talk about put 1,000, put 10,000 hours into studying Bitcoin. Why so much? Well, there's so much ground to cover, because it begins with these questions of what is money, and to answer that, you need what is society, and what is productivity, and what is freedom, and you end up with all of these deep rabbit holes that aren't all easy to answer. And the more that you hear someone saying this is easy, I'll offer you a 5-word definition of what this is, or I'll explain what it is to you in 10 minutes, there isn't the richness. Like one of the nice realities, but hard realities of understanding a concept deeply is it takes a lot of time. You have to chew on the idea. You have to see it in various instances. You have to see what the edge cases of it, what the exceptions to it are, what the opposites to it are, and then you can actually, chew on the idea enough to digest it and understand it deeply. But that also takes time, and it's more coherent when you have good thinking skills to explore the idea.
Yeah, truth takes time. It's easy to tell lies, and it's lazy. And fiat has falsified what money is, for centuries throughout history. And we've only found out at times, too late with the collapse of civilizations. And that's what I like about Bitcoin is that it reveals the truth of money, because that's why most of us haven't known what money is, because we've been lied to for so long. When you look at the characteristics and the attributes of what money is supposed to be, and then Bitcoin comes along, and you're like, oh, wow, this is why this question of what is money always comes up, because we've sort of been lied to about what it is, what it's supposed to be. And then Bitcoin comes along and you're like, oh, wow, that's what money is. Anyway, sorry, Matt, and then Omar.
Awesome. Yes, let's do some Bitcoin. I love that we're talking about money, right? Because money, and I've said this before, but I'll drill down on it a little bit more. Money is a universal API for needs and wants. It's actually how trust flows through a society. And it's a clearinghouse that prevents the inefficiency of barter, and it allows for specialization to rise in a society. So it's very important. Money keeps gaining more and more value in our society for lots of reasons, but I think the importance is being principally driven up because everything is increasingly financialized and virtualized. And most of the listeners are locked into a dynamic where they trade their time for money, right? It's called employment. And collectively, we turn our time to dollars, and then the central bankers printed more dollars, which lowered the value of those dollars. So really, the elites are using the control of the central banking infrastructure to steal our time, not just our money. So it's very true that bad money can kill a society, and it has before. Good money prevents the inefficiency of third parties, like especially the centralized ones that I just mentioned. And great money, which is money we've never had before, and I'll end here, could be all things. It could be a store of wealth, a medium of exchange, and even a universal collateral layer. And that's only possible thanks to the technological advances that layer game theory, cryptography, distributed computing, right? So Bitcoin saves money and saves us from ourselves by taking the power away from the central parties and putting it back into the hands of the people at the edges of the map, aka each and every one of us.
Yeah, Matt, I think that's great. I saw this a chart of home prices consistent with inflation, and it's really interesting. If you look at 1970, you start to see the bullwhip effect that kind of keeps going all along until today, right? Because we lost at least a semblance of our sound money, and then everyone decided they wanted to store their value elsewhere because they needed to store their value somewhere, and unfortunately went to a consumable good, right? Real estate. And so we have this massive issue where the entire middle and lower class is unable to find anywhere to live on a permanent basis or have the joys of home ownership because we've moved our store of value into a necessary consumable good. But yeah, that was a great point. I think we have more hands, but I can't see them.
I think the hands went down.
No more
Oh,
hands.
Bit Petro.
No more hands. Yeah, but I got a take that I've always had this take. It's unpopular, and I think it's something that we have to explore. To me, when I see Bitcoin, and I've been in it for a while, I don't see money. I'm sorry. I literally see a Merkle tree, and the only other place in the world I've seen a Merkle tree is literally in a courthouse, because that's how deeds flow in transactions that flow through time. That transactions that can split up and come back together, exactly like a Bitcoin transaction can take Satoshis and split them up and bring them back together. So I have a real hard time with just labeling Bitcoin money, because I see it as a time chain. I see it as a like almost like a notary tool on steroids, because it essentially gives the world the ability to have this virtual courthouse slash clock that everybody can agree on. And if properly structured and used, can start to also give us money on top of um, key paired public contracts, which I think is something that people really haven't grasped, that key pair public contracts will probably become law. because if you're going to have some of these things that we're all ideating about constructing in Bitcoin with time locks and shit, you're essentially saying you're going to build a financial robot. And if you don't think that there's going to be regulations around financial robots, you don't know government.
Tomer.
Yeah, I'd ask BitPetro. That was you who was just speaking, right? I'm out in the sun and it's a little bright.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
See,
BitPetro.
I'm wondering if you've read Gigi's essay called "Bitcoin is Time," because it speaks to what you started your comments about, how money in history has been both a ledger and a token, and without spoiling it too much. And it's a big read with a lot of profound ideas in it. So I don't want to oversimplify it, but he points out Bitcoin.
I haven't read
Okay.
it. I haven't read it, but also, but you hearing you talk about it kind of reminds me of the notion that title is not only a document, it is the chain that gives you ownership. So
Okay,
you must have not only
you'll honestly
document.
love this. It is, I would say, without a doubt, my favorite essay in the whole of Bitcoin. And Gigi's so brilliant, and he starts this one off really tremendously. But I think this will shine a light on some of these points that you were making, and maybe help you think about them in a way that will integrate the idea of Bitcoin with money and this idea of a tree and a ledger and a token and all these kinds of things together. So I'm just going to highly recommend that essay to you. And if you do read it and you want to discuss it, I'd be really happy to discuss it with you. The other thing that you were saying, which is, this key pair based mutual signing of things, is like, it's kind of like a new way of it's just a new way to sign things, but it's a much more thorough way and much less prone to uh, forgery than old signatures and old seals. And but I think we're going to find that Noster or something like that is more the place to sign documents and have documents revealed than Bitcoin. Bitcoin, I mean, you you, you can use it as a timestamp server.
I completely agree. That's my point, is that we have this technological stack now that is greater than just Bitcoin. But if you think about it, the signature doesn't really matter if you don't have a ledger to go with it. You can't do nearly as much.
Well, if you and I both produce a document that's not signed with ink, but signed with keys that with the private keys of public keys that we both publicly declared are our identities, that, and we take that to a court of law because you and I have some kind of dispute about it, that that at some point in the near future will be seen as equally binding as if there was uh, an inked signature by both.
That is exactly what I'm saying. So what I'm implying is that exercise will then use the Bitcoin time chain to execute these events, and those events will then serve as the public record, which is what the courthouse used to be. So one of my arguments is that Bitcoin is not just money; it might be the new world courthouse, because it'll be the public square upon which English common law used to have. You have a contract, me with Tomer, and what we'd do is we'd stab the damn contract on the courthouse door, because the courthouse was in the square, and everybody would walk around and see that the contract was there and see, hey, Jonathan told Tomer that he was going to pay him up, and he didn't pay him up. So then they go deal with Jonathan together collectively. Well, guess what? English common law can be applied globally so long as you have the ability to have a public
Well,
store for the contract.
you need more than just to store the contract. You need enforcers. If somebody violates that
The
contract.
enforcer, no, the enforcers. Hang on, the enforcers are the jurisdiction you live in. That's not going to change. We're not going to reintroduce law in some abstract way. You're going to live within the real world you live in. Now, how you take that to a judge, that will start to suss out, because people are going to start having these situations where a Nostra account, or like I said, I think it's more along the lines of these time locked private keys and concessions, because that is probate, people. That's literally probate.
Tomer, did you want to finish?
Well, I kind of want to, like, I think that all these discussions take place, which is what else is this technology is so intriguing. People get fascinated and they want to see what else they can do with the technology besides money, which is a fair pursuit. right? We've had the opportunity to see a lot of invalid pursuits in the crypto space that turns out, you know, people trying to avoid the courts and the legal system and to execute fraud has been a big application of blockchain technology, because it's such a confusing space and people don't understand it well. I do think what we're seeing happen with Nostr right now, not just as a substitute for Twitter, but literally as a platform where your identity is a public-private key pair, which means you're already signed up to every service that will ever exist, that uses this protocol for identity, and you'll be able to interchange and interplay between these things. It's like a new form of it's like identity on the World Wide Web, but your identity is pseudonymous and you can create as many identities as you want, which has all sorts of other implications. So there's a lot to think about there too. And and that's another avenue besides this invention of digital scarce good hard money that Bitcoin represents. So, and it's not that the two things exist in separate universes, but where I was coming from initially today is let's understand the first, and be able to develop our critical thinking skills that will allow us to understand both the first and the latter when it comes to turning our attention to it. But all of these things are complicated and they're different, right? One thing that's really unique about Bitcoin, as if you look at it as a legal system of its own, it doesn't need a judge. Like the nodes are the judges, and they judge every action before they allow it to take place. Right? Like if you're sending a double spend transaction, it never makes it into the record. If you're trying to spend money that you don't have, it never makes it into the record. So you don't have to have adjudication and enforcement after the fact. The enforcement takes place through proof of work in what is allowed to happen. So nobody gets to break the rules of Bitcoin. So you don't have to have all these courts and enforcers to say, did so-and-so break the rule? If he did, what damages did he do? How's he going to correct it? How much time does he have to spend in jail? What community service does he have to do? Who does he have to pay money back to? It's like in Bitcoin, as just the money system, nobody gets to break the rules. And so this is one of the things that's profoundly unique about it. Nobody can nobody can counterfeit it. Nobody can double spend it, and so that and everyone can verify it. So that's one really unique thing about Bitcoin that hasn't existed in any other form of money before. And the rules of it, it exists outside the court system. It exists outside the system of law enforcement. It is its own set of laws that are self-protective and unbreakable, inviolable, which is extraordinary and mind-boggling, and it drives people insane, and it drives them towards spirituality and disbelief and all kinds of things. That's just one aspect of it.
Yeah, and that's what I mean, bringing it back to truth about Bitcoin being truth, because you just can't you can't violate that. It is what it is. You just accept it, or you're not a part of it. Hey, Cosmo, are you on the camp of turning Sats into Bitcoins? Because I don't like that camp.
Yeah, I got a lot of heat for my nuanced opinion on this take. Yeah, I think that there's a lot of anger over this kind of like ridiculous. Look, this is kind of how I feel about that, right? If I could wave a magic wand and I could make the smallest unit in Bitcoin a Bitcoin, and at the same time keep the 21 million meme, I'd do it in a heartbeat. I'd do it absolutely in a heartbeat. Unfortunately, that's entirely not possible, and I think that 21 million is the strongest meme in Bitcoin, and changing it to 21 quadrillion would not help. I think as soon as the 21 million meme wouldn't be necessary, if there's ever a day and age where that's not necessary, yeah, I could see that. TC came right up to jump at me on this, but
You
but yeah, I think that I go ahead.
Oh no, I was just gonna say the bat call, TC's bat call.
Exactly, yeah. So but yeah, I think that
Where's my shaking my head emoji? Where's the like
there you
face
go.
palm emoji?
Yeah, what you got,
Where's the
TC?
eye rolling emoji? I need some more emojis. Elon, are you listening? No. Well, so before we get to Sats and Bitcoins, I just wanted to chime in again, and I liked the last section of conversation.
Bitcoin's property ownership dynamics are its own. There's nothing that a law anywhere outside of Bitcoin can somehow superimpose or conduct justice as it's seen on the outside. I want to remind people Craig Wright found out the hard way. He was literally trying to get the courts to rule in such a fashion to allow him to exert control on the system. Didn't work out too well for him. So just make sure that your private key is a secret that only you have, because the moment somebody else has that same secret, they are just as much the owner of your Bitcoin as you are. So yeah, I really like that topic. As far as sort of trying to play some trickery with the naming scheme, it's pretty ridiculous, and it's honestly, it feels to me like people are sort of just anxious for the next leg up of the bull run and are looking for sort of desperate ways to try to rope in retail. And I just don't think that that's, first of all, the problem, and that's not really, I don't think it would be a good thing in any way to sort of change the overall naming scheme. The sats are working quite well. They have for basically nearly the entire length of Bitcoin's existence. I really think that the solution is really people just adopting the sats standard. Last cycle, there was a lot of people talking about how exchanges and wallets should be using the sats standard, meaning you just showing the Bitcoin amounts in sats instead of all the decimal places with Bitcoins. And that's something that's really easily attainable. It does not require us renaming that smaller unit with something that just fundamentally doesn't make any sense. And if you say, oh, well, here's 21 million Bitcoin, but each Bitcoin is divided into 100 million Bitcoins, you have just entered the land of Mad Hatters. So I think that it's
Yeah,
kind of
no,
like, it's
TC,
kind of a ridiculous thing. And
I agree with you on that
yeah.
point. Like, I think that if you have two things called Bitcoin, that's kind of retarded. Like, you can't have a big Bitcoin and then a small Bitcoin. You'd have to like rename it down to, and that's why I was saying you can't do both, right? Because one of them has to be Bitcoin. It can't be BTC and Bitcoin, because BTC is Bitcoin. Like, it's been that way for a long time. Um, I do think that like the brand of Sats, how many people I've talked to about Bitcoin who own Bitcoin that can't even pronounce Satoshi. I don't think it's a fantastic brand. I get that like people picked up on it and it'll work. I don't think it's a bad thing. Um, but if you're
Jamie
like
Dimon said
asking,
it was Satoshi.
yeah, Satoshi, I've heard an incredible amount of mispronunciations of that. But yeah, I don't think approaching, this is my problem with a lot of the ways people approach this. People approach this like, oh, it's the dumbest thing ever. This is so stupid. Like, it's the most ridiculous thing ever. It's like, kind of not really. Like Satoshi, when he decided it was going to be 100 million units to one Bitcoin, he was like, hey, this could change later on as like adoption improve. He put that in the paper. So I think saying it's ridiculous on his face is ridiculous, but I also think there are a lot of good reasons not to do it. I'm in favor of definitely not doing the BIP 177 because I think it's ridiculous for the reasons that I said. Like, you can't have two Bitcoins, but I also think there's room for some nuance and being like, yeah, I get that, but this is still
Well,
stupid. You
maybe
know what
we
I'm saying?
should change cents to dolls. I mean, cents to dollars make no sense. Where did cents come from? I want dolls. I want dolls,
No,
and I want a
the
dollar.
This is my other beef with this whole discussion is people are like, we need bits, we need sats, we need like hexa Bitcoin or whatever. The only reason we have cents and quarters and dollars and bigger paper dollars is because you have to put the physical items in your pocket and carry them around, right? You don't want to have to carry a billion pennies with you everywhere. And that's why you created the dollar, right? So in a sense, there is very little purpose to having multiple denominations of Bitcoin, right? In the future, I could see one or two, right? You have Bitcoin as we know it with 100 million units, and then you have Satoshi, which is the smallest units. You don't need more than that because you don't have to carry multiple denominations in your pocket, right?
Well, sats also does sound like cents. So for me, it's always made sense. But I get what you're saying. someone who first comes into Bitcoin, it is weird. You're like, what is this Sats thing? But once you get here, it's so simple. Just like going to any other country, you go to France or Italy or wherever. I have to learn what those little denominations are. So figure it out. And you're right. We can never get rid of the 21 million narrative. That is just too big and probably the biggest beacon for Bitcoin for newcomers.
I think
Yeah, let's go to
you're
Eric.
bordering on
Oh.
on betraying the history too, because there's some really amazing numeric things that go on when you look at the history of Bitcoin. One of my favorite little oddities that is not accidental, in my opinion, is 50 Bitcoin per block has the subsidy during the epoch in which 50% of the supply was issued, 25 Bitcoin per block in the epoch during which 25% of the supply was issued, so on and so forth, 12 and a half, 6 and a quarter. And we're currently in the epoch where 3 1/8% of the supply is going to be issued 3.125 Bitcoin per block. You want to blow that out? You want to talk about 5 billion Bitcoins per block? And it's just the biggest problem for me is you get another sort of unit bias numeric problem if you do this, is that most people don't know even how to think about big numbers. Forget about quadrillion. Try to get people to think logically about trillions, and it just falls apart. We don't really do big numbers very well as humans. So I think that's a big problem and deal breaker for any kind of rebranding of
Yeah,
Bitcoins.
I think that would be interesting for someone who is like, you're looking 50 years down the line, someone who's like a monetary historian of Bitcoin. But let's be honest, how many people who own a significant amount of Bitcoin right now, if you asked them what was the issuance in the second epoch, they could tell you 25. Like, I think that's also pretty low. So I don't know if I get it. Like the symbolism is great and I love that stuff. But in terms of like, what it looks like in 50, 100 years, I don't know, you know, if one would be better than the other.
Let's go to Eric.
Yeah.
Yeah. Eric,
Yeah,
Eric, or Rice,
either one.
just misspelled.
Either
Yeah,
one. All pig Latin. Yeah, no, this is actually an interesting conversation. I want to get into the stablecoin bill in just a second, but I think that one of the quotes that I brought, I just posted out, I think is very pertinent to this discussion of Bitcoin versus Satoshi, because the purpose is to bring in uneducated retail, and uneducated retail is in and out, as fast as humanly possible. We all know that. So it's kind of like, what is the purpose behind rebranding of, a 16-year-old brand? Look at Twitter. I don't call Twitter X. It's always going to be Twitter. Meta is always going to be Facebook. It's just kind of a worthless exercise. And it really goes against this old quote that I found last night thinking about this topic. You can't teach educated people by catering to their ignorance. You lift them up by challenging their assumptions with truth and reason. And most of America is fairly astute in understanding that money is not working out for them. I wouldn't say that they understand the intricacies of money, but I would assume that everyone is looking for a better, fairer system. And just from orange pilling constantly every day, I see that happening. So this argument, a lot of arguments that take place online are engagement farming arguments. The only one that I've heard was my wife. She said, "Why don't you call a Bitcoin a Satoshi and a Satoshi a Bitcoin?" That would make sense to me, but it still goes against the grain. The fact of the matter is, for many of us, it took years to get comfortable enough with Bitcoin, and understanding a Satoshi was like day one. So we really need people to dig in and understand what the system is, what the concept is, how hash rate works. Like, bringing retail in based on unit bias. It's kind of like, we're a $2 trillion asset, and we're trying to use marketing tactics of $80 billion assets. So if we look at things from a success ratio, like an entrepreneur would, our marketing campaign has been far more successful using the terms that we have than any other coin that's out there. Yeah, we're lacking on some of the smaller investors that are coming here, but they're going to come in here. I mean, I think that's what the Stablecoin Act does, is open up a big gateway for two things. I think it opens up the gateway for a misunderstood CBDC system, which is what stablecoins essentially are. Fully programmable backend, centrally controlled. Yes, they're backed by treasuries, but they are a representation of a US dollar. But at the same time, it's also a tremendous on-ramp for Bitcoin. And I think that we will see that will spawn an altcoin surge. And after that surge, I think we see a big flood into Bitcoin. What do you guys think about the Stablecoin Act? That's the way I see it. It's a double-edged sword to me.
Hey, real quick before we go to that, I just shared a post in the Nest. It's a thread that I did back last December when this whole bits and sats and bitcoins conversation was going on then, and I did a little deep dive into how many different units that we use in the realm of science that are named after the founder, the creator, the discoverer. And I thought it was really interesting because it was a lot more than I was aware of. And part of me thinks that that's another reason to just leave sats alone, is just it's at the very least a breadcrumb for people to, even 100 years in the future, look into what is this Satoshi guy. Anyways, I also want to chime in on the stablecoin thing. Is I just think it's caution is warranted as far as some of the kind of dystopian things that are shaping up here, where it sure looks like stablecoins is going to be kind of serving as like a pseudo CBDC in the future. And I think it's something people should not just look at as purely bullish because you want the Bitcoin price to go up, but there's a lot of really interesting and eyebrow raising relationships going on between these stablecoin issuers and the federal government and the treasury. And we all know the tendencies of most of these governments in the world is to go more towards control, oversight, total lack of privacy for individuals. I think stablecoins takes us one step closer to that stuff. So that's all I want to say on that topic.
Hey, let's say hi to Puncher. Puncher, welcome. How's it going today?
Great, guys. Good morning. Sorry I'm late. And fiat stuff to do in the fiat world.
Are you okay that Lauren wants to rename Satoshi's Little Laurens? Are you okay with Little Laurens?
Oh man, branding's gonna be tough, but I'm up for anything. Hey, what's going on? You guys may have talked about it. What's going on with the Senate bill that passed regulating crypto? Did you speak about that already?
Yeah, we were actually just getting
Oh,
into it. So it just went through, I think it's called cloture or whatever, where there was a filibuster. They voted to end the filibuster, and now they're going to vote on it, from what I understand. Is that right, Eric? I think he knows more about this than I do.
Yeah, it's still got one final hurdle, but it crawled through that. It's going to pass at this point. When it gets through cloture, it's going to pass.
what's the TLDR on it, Eric? Do you know? I mean, I see that a lot of the miners are down in some Bitcoin enterprise companies, for lack of a better term, are down today. Does that have anything to do with this bill passing?
I don't think that has anything to do with the bill passing. I think it has to do with profit taking today. I think there's a lot of profits that have been made. So I think you're looking at people just taking down fiat, hopefully buying into Bitcoin because that is going up. The TLDR on the stablecoin bill, and I'm not the authority here, is that they are going to allow corporations to be able to purchase treasuries to issue digital currencies in coordination with the government. So for certain ones, like over $10 billion, and I could be wrong on all this stuff, but over $10 billion on issuance for a stable coin, they are then regulated by the Federal Reserve. So this is, in my humblest of opinion, I think this is an appeasement bill for the crypto industry. It is a good first start, don't get me wrong, but I think that this is there was a common ground struck between us being forced into a CBDC, which was fairly inevitable until Trump. And I think this is a negotiation tactic where and it's important to explain the difference between a CBDC and a stable coin. They have tremendous similarities with programmability and control. Both of them, I mean, again, if it's over 10 billion, which anyone that we're going to use is going to be over 10 billion in market cap, those will be the oversight and regulation will be the Federal Reserve. So they are going to have control. But the difference between a stable coin and a CBDC, I think, is a political negotiation because there are CBDCs launching in Europe. CBDCs are pure fiat. They are digital tokens printed by a government, fully controlled, fully issued with absolutely no backing. A stable coin is issued by a corporation in cahoots with the federal government, which is just, a fascism 101 collaboration. But at the same time, it actually has backing. So they will have a percentage of assets to be held in literally only treasuries and US dollars. So I think that they are obligated, and I could be wrong on this, but they are obligated if they are a yield-bearing stablecoin, meaning they have a lot of treasury holdings, that they are obligated to share the earnings with the stablecoin holder, which is a benefit if that's true. I don't know if that's a big part of it. If that's true, that's great. But I think the best thing about this bill is that it will eliminate the middlemen. So you can look at Visa and MasterCard stocks next year and find out where they are, because I think that's actually the target, is eliminating these middlemen that are raping small businesses with 5-6% transaction fees, where they can go into a stablecoin environment with almost no fees and instant clearing for their cash. So overall, I see it being a tremendous win for the overall economy. I think that it's a gateway possibility for more Bitcoin adoption or more Bitcoin hodling. But at the same time, as I do with anything, I think we should always express caution on the other side of things, where we are going from cash, which is uncontrollable. If you have cash, you can spend it wherever you want, and they're going to push towards a more wallet-driven stablecoin economy, where literally the Federal Reserve has oversight and regulatory control over these stablecoins. That's kind of the
I just
TLDR.
looked at the top stablecoins, Tether, USDC, and their price hasn't budged. They're still at $1. How come this news hasn't hit them?
It's not bullish enough.
Well, so let's fast forward, I don't know, 5, 10 years. So this is kind of where my radar is up a little bit. So Bitcoin gets relegated to collateral that collateralizes in one form or another stable coins or digital dollars, say, or digital fiat that is programmable and traceable and trackable. Kevin, you had 4 hamburgers this month. That's too many. You like, am I missing that? Does it take away Bitcoin as a medium of exchange? And is it just another control mechanism?
I mean, that's certainly a possibility 5 years down the road. That's where I think education becomes extremely important for us. We have to really focus in on getting down to brass tacks and less philosophy, because this is, if I were an evil overlord, which governments are, even the term government, you break it into 2 words. Govern means to control, ment is of the mind. So government is by itself defined as mind control. They will try to create these new issuances that actually compete with Bitcoin, and with exactly what you just said, Puncher. Full control, full transparency. And by the way, they don't need to integrate this. This was already done in OP 1670, I think it is the Fed Now Act. They already have full control, full access. Every intelligence agency in the world can type into a computer and look in your bank account and see how you spend your money. This makes it easier for them. But that's where we have to understand that Bitcoin is not, in my understanding and my belief, Bitcoin is not designed to take over the banking industry. It is designed to be kind of that sidecar on the motorcycle, where you can be the driver or the passenger. It gets you out of the system when you need to be and in the system when you want to be. But I think that you're pretty spot on there, Puncher. I think it's again, it's a great thing for small business, for commerce, for the digital asset space as a whole, Bitcoin included. But everything that goes through Congress currently for the last 80 years is always a Trojan horse of some sort. Here's a lot of freedom, but they have this back door that'll take it away from you if you don't pay attention closely. So education, I think, in Bitcoin is going to be massively important moving forward.
I see your hand, Rusty Titty.
Sorry, bubbling over the little mute. Yeah, I mean the main thing is it's filibuster proof now. They put this on the floor and it got kicked to the curb. But with all the players coming in, this really just gives some backing. I put in the comments a lot of the nerd stuff around it, but it requires reserves. It puts the AML, BSA stuff into play here, and just it puts it in out. It puts some of the language out of EO into an actual bill itself, right? I just see this as more of a win for Bitcoin, because you got to understand, in the banking industry, the regulators, the biggest issue up to that executive order was they would not. The SEC, I mean, you guys, if you remember, were beating the hell out of these banks and stuff. No, you cannot take that as collateral. You can't do this. You cannot recognize Bitcoin or any other crypto as anything. And then when Trump signed that, it was like, oh, hey, and look what we have. Everyone and their brother is buying into Bitcoin. And, getting anything into bill form, into stable coin, it's just the next step. I've looked at it. I don't see anything. Of course, people can twist it. We've all gone down the rabbit hole of attorneys that can twist words and make things and cases for whatever. But it's more or less a requirement to keep. My biggest thing is the reserve factor on the stable coin, right? That I did like that provision in there. So I don't see this being anything crazy other than regulating stable coins at the moment, but it also gives validation for Bitcoin more than anything from a law standpoint. So I'll just say that.
Well, and I think from another angle, what it also does is it balances out the lower demand in treasuries. So, I mean, that is the absolute purpose of stablecoins, is to be the vacuum for treasuries to keep the debt float alive while the currency debases slowly and most people won't recognize it. So I agree with you, Rusty. I think it's a net win for everyone, but I think the caution here is let's try to define, besides the asset backing, what is the actual fundamental difference between a stable coin and a CBDC, and there isn't much besides financial backing.
Hey, Grant, welcome. How you doing today?
Great, guys. I'm doing all right.
We've
Hey
been
Grant, we need to make a space where you're just our guest so we can actually dedicate like a big chunk of time. Because oftentimes we try to work you in between a schedule or something, but you get to say a few words and you have to bail or you don't get to say anything. So it'd be nice if we could do that. I know you're busy, but maybe we should work on having you as like an official guest where we can actually just spend time going back and forth with you.
for 9 hours straight, Grant.
Well, I would settle for 8.5, but yes, 9 is preferred.
And just
Rusty,
like
go ahead.
that, you sent him off stage, Lauren. Good
I
job.
stared at
Yep,
Grant was like, "Whoa, 9 hours! I'm
good
out."
job. Well, hey,
Thank you.
let's welcome Jason to the stage. I forget. I don't think we heard from him much
There
yet.
he is. Yeah.
Yeah, good morning. I've just been listening. Love both of the main topics here so far. So thanks
I
for
see
having
you
me up.
just did a new Robin Sear podcast. How was that?
Yeah, it was really fun. I well, I mean, he does a really good job of letting you talk about yourself, and so I think we can all agree that I am fascinating. So that was fun talking about, my arc and stuff that I think about. So it was great.
And so for those who don't have time to see it, is there a TLDR or like what's the main topic or subject if people want to check it out?
Well, yeah. So, um, I guess the 30-second version is less about why is Bitcoin awesome, but what can we do with it. My general point of view is thinking about systems and solving problems and less about growing wealth, although that's super important. But I've started a bunch of companies in the past, and so I tend to think about things through a lens of what problem are we solving and how do we get there. And lately, I've been thinking about how do we use Bitcoin to solve certain problems, not just the global monetary system, but how do we infuse Bitcoin into maybe not day to day buying lattes and or even cars, but how do we use it as a tool to build companies that then solve problems? So we spent about probably half of the podcast talking about stuff related to that, um, and
So
so
like
you
like a
can hop over.
collateral instrument, you mean?
Yeah, yeah. There, probably everybody in the space probably is aware of the battery, or I think it's New Market or Battery. I can't remember which entity did it, but this commercial real estate loan that they put together that infused Bitcoin into the collateral stack of a commercial real estate loan. And at the end, so at the beginning of the loan, Bitcoin gets purchased as part of the funding of the loan, and then at the end of that period, the loan gets paid off. The borrower owns the property outright, but also owns new Bitcoin for them. Um, and then the appreciation on the Bitcoin is mostly the lenders or a split with the lender. That like it was an interesting sort of structure. And I've just been sort of obsessed with that for the past 3 or 4 months. Once I heard that model, so I've been thinking about it in terms of film finance. Basically, anything that has a low time preference as an investment perspective can use Bitcoin as part of the collateral stack. I think it's going to be a really powerful tool as we go forward. And it's not about yield so much, this rehypothecation thing that we all fucking despise. That's not what I'm talking about. This is about using Bitcoin to make a loan less risky, but also to stack more sats from scratch for a particular endeavor. That's the thing I've been thinking about, and so that's sort of the essence. That's not the essence
Well, I
of the
think
entire
that's
podcast, but go ahead.
yeah. I think that's what Grant's been doing. I think on a couple of projects now, starting with one down in Florida, and I think you have a new one. I don't know if you can talk to that Grant, but yeah, you and Jason should connect. It sounds like you guys are thinking the same things.
Yeah, that's exactly what we're doing. We buy a piece of real estate, and I think you used the word collateralized. We're collateralizing. In addition, we're paying cash for the real estate, and then we add Bitcoin to get back to the replacement cost of the real estate. Now, this is just a thesis of mine that for this to work, I mean, for it to conservatively work well, that you want to be under replacement costs. Michael Saylor would say, bro, just buy the real estate. Doesn't matter what you pay and just add Bitcoin to it. But I'm a bit more conservative than that. So I'm going to find an institutional quality asset, purchase it below what it would cost to rebuild it, and then add add Bitcoin back to that replacement cost value. So let's say it would cost 100 to build it and I could buy it for 75. I would make $25 of that Bitcoin to be back at 100. Believing believing the premise that I'll be at some point the real estate will sell in the future for a replacement cost, which means when it does, I own my Bitcoin for free.
Right. Yep. You get a bunch of
And
Bitcoin for
provide
free out of these products. That's right.
yeah, exactly. So and the real estate cash flows, one of the great benefits of real estate is it's a very easy business when you buy in the right location. If you don't ever over leverage it, it'll provide cash flow, and we have the ability to then buy more Bitcoin on a monthly basis. And over 4 years, we should match the original amount. So we'll end up with about, in this case, $50 million worth of Bitcoin, $100 million worth of real estate. At some point, I can sell my real estate, or at some point, I can sell my Bitcoin, or at some point, I can leverage both of them. But I would never get in trouble with being dependent upon one or the other.
Are you doing these Grant with like multifamily value adds or mostly big commercial
Yeah,
properties? Yeah.
it's really multifamily, no value add.
Oh, like
Okay,
development
like
ground up.
no, 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 no. It's all stabilized. It's stabilized, cash flow positive, but the locations are ridiculous. The value add thing that a lot of the syndicators tried in the last 3 or 4 or 5 years. I mean, they're business plans. It's a business. You got to go in, you got to change the kitchen, spend 20 grand a door. So we're buying institutional quality, best in class. I mean, brochure cover shit that we don't have to spend money on for 10 years. And it still cash flows. So you're putting the best real estate in the world, combining it with Bitcoin, which gives Bitcoin a big exposure to. I literally was with a guy this weekend. We're doing a deal. The deal could be about $250 million. And I said, do you want in on the Bitcoin piece? And he's like, look, bro, I want in on the Bitcoin. I don't want you to tell me anything about it. I don't want to learn anything about it. You just run the Bitcoin portion. So he's like, if the Bitcoin's free, I fucking want some. If I got to learn about it, I'm not interested.
So Grant,
I said,
you're making these
that's what we're
guys
doing.
money and doing all the work, right? That's what you're
Oh
providing
yeah,
for them.
yeah, 100%. I mean, that's for our investors. Our investors are going to make, the money. We find the asset, we buy the asset, we manage the purchase of the asset, the management, the ongoing management of the asset, and then obviously the purchases of the Bitcoin.
Yeah, maybe some of these people just need to look at this like a magic box. Like, don't even tell me what you're doing. I know you're going to just make my investment safer. And, but then maybe after the deal's over and they see how it worked, they're like, oh, maybe I better learn about this.
Yeah, exactly. So the best way to onboard anybody is to give them an experience with it, and make it part of their investment thesis. I was on the phone with Bank of America today because they're looking at taking these first 10 or 12 deals that we were doing public, And, they still can't get their heads around Bitcoin. They said, we have to understand the Bitcoin. I'm like, okay, do you understand real estate? Yes. They're the number one. I mean, they do more REITs than anybody, B of A. And she's like, we're the best in class. We do them all, Avalon and Camden and da-da-da. And I'm like, okay, that's great. They got cash in their operations accounts, right, to handle CapEx. Yeah, yeah. Is there any value to the cash? Well, whatever the cash is. Well, not really, because the cash has the liability to go spend it on CapEx. All I'm doing is converting cash that I don't need, or I'm loading up my asset when I buy it with Bitcoin. I could use it for CapEx, but hopefully the Bitcoin will grow faster than my CapEx, my capital expenditure obligations are. But look, these legacy people are so busy with their legacy business and making money off of it that they don't have time to go study Bitcoin. So I'm going to prove it out to them. I said, look, we're going to prove the thesis out. I already have 4 funds that are working. The first 4 we did in since the beginning of the year, like they're going to outperform every other all 41 other assets that I have without the Bitcoin. So just prove the concept.
Hey, Grant, do you see the tide turning in the TradFi space? And I know I've talked to banks that are looking into the new market model, Missouri and another state bank. Are you seeing them wanting to learn about Bitcoin? Because for me, it's like 10% of them are interested in learning more for an hour and think they can understand it in an hour.
Well, first of all, what does trad 5 mean? I hear that term all the time. What does that term even mean?
Traditional
Legacy
finance.
finance. Yeah.
Okay. What does trad mean though? Why they use that acronym?
Traditional.
Oh, got it. Okay. So yeah, look, I think it's they either glaze over and they're not interested, or they get it right away. There's almost nothing in between. They either get it or they just glazed over and they're like, yeah, I don't understand that.
That sounds about right.
So the moment I like, it's probably 90-10. It might be smaller than that. If they're making money in the trad 5, if they're making money, if they're making big money, they're probably going to glaze over.
So Grant, what you're
Because
saying is,
their current compensation has them blinded to new opportunities.
I'm sorry to interrupt, guys. I got to run. I just want to make this point real quick. So Grant, what you're saying is that the people out there aren't really willing to put in the work to learn about what Bitcoin and real estate is. They're too busy with their own lives, making their own living. So what you're doing is you're doing the hard work. You're providing the service, just like in the traditional finance aspect, what your broker does. But you're just doing it with the most hard assets that are available right now. And with that, guys, have a good day. I got to run.
Yeah, I'm using an asset class that they already understand, and we're adding Bitcoin, and we're not really selling the Bitcoin. We're proposing the opportunity of real estate, the cash flows, and it's beautiful real estate. It's great real estate. Nobody wants to manage real estate. Nobody wants to go pick up checks or evict people or fix shit. So we're doing that. That's worked for hundreds of years. And then we're adding Bitcoin component to enhance the returns. It doesn't diminish the asset class. If we don't have any long-term, if we don't have any short-term requirements on the debt, then I'm not going to lose either the real estate or the Bitcoin. And as long as I have time, we'll probably be all right. Maybe better than all right.
Hey, Grant, there's a big developer on the East Coast that called me the other day, and I had mentioned to him what you were doing. Now they are building ground up residential outside of like the Jersey Shore, so just like a few miles inland. And they were really enthralled with the idea. So I don't know. Do you think, for whatever reason, this would not apply to new construction and only has to deal with like kind of refurbishing existing properties, or maybe?
The issue that I would suggest that could be problematic is that construction loans he's got to go get a construction loan. They're very expensive. I mean, to you guys, it might not be expensive, but it's probably going to be 14%. But
This might be self-finance. It's a big family.
yeah, okay. So they're self-financing. So yeah, like the way to present it to him is, look, if your cost went up 10%, would you still do the project? And he's going to be like, yeah, I would still do it. So what I would tell him is just add 10% of your cost to a Bitcoin purchase.
And then what's the exit for them? Like what? So a family buys
Well, the
buy
exit
a
for him would
house.
be the exit for him. Yeah, the exit would be for him would be sell the real estate and own your Bitcoin for free. I mean, look, in his case, he ought to just sell the real estate and buy Bitcoin because he doesn't have any income. His properties don't produce income. They just he builds shit and sells it and builds it again and sells it again.
Well, now that I'm thinking about it, they're trying to bring in investors. That was the reason for their call to me.
Right.
Yeah, they
Well,
probably
to
financed the
bring out
majority of it, but want to bring in some initial
to
seed
bring
money.
in investors now he would basically bring the investor in. He would add the 10%, let's say Bitcoin, to his sales price or to his cost, and whether he includes the investor in the Bitcoin purchase or just includes them in the real estate acquisition, that's where it could get really juicy for everybody.
Got it.
Because
Got it.
real estate returns, like sometimes they work out. When it's good market, it works out great. When it's bad, nobody ever talks about their bad deals, but people do have bad deals, right? And then the problem he's going to have is he's got a deadline. I don't have a deadline. He's going to build something and want to sell it and get out. And we don't know. Nobody here knows what it's going to be worth next week. In my case, I have 10 years to wait for the real estate.
Grant,
So in 10
can I
years, if
ask
I
you
get,
something a little bit sidetracked? Do you know what a land bank is in oil and gas?
yeah, sure. I think it would work great in oil and gas.
So as a land bank, or would you do it differently?
No, I would just add it to the cost of production.
Hey, Shapeshift, I see your hand up.
Hey, GM, I need some help, guys. I'd love to have some of the brain trust throw something in the pill for me. I literally have.
Okay, what happened there, guys? I'm not sure.
We lost him.
I'm on the edge of my seat.
Who did we lose? I don't.
Now I want to
I don't know.
know.
Shapeshift.
That was like the best drop off ever.
You're not going to believe this, but
Hey, Charlie, welcome to the stage.
Yeah, thank you so much. Honor's all mine, guys. I've been connecting with Lauren and been around that space. So I do operations at Wolf. So, but I wanted to key in. I love Bitcoin and love the guys' spaces. You guys do a great job. So,
What's up, Charlie? Are you coming to Vegas?
yes, dude, I just booked my flights today.
Yay!
I know. I'm super excited,
Oh,
dude.
okay.
Are you
Sweet.
still doing poker?
Yeah, looking forward to meeting you. Yeah, it looks like there was a lot of interest. I just threw it out on the whim last night because I
We
know
gotta
I
play.
got a couple poker buddies. Yeah, so Tuesday after dinner, we plan on hitting up the Venetian. So we'll probably just invade the room and then just a lot of us congregate on one
Okay,
table. People were asking if we're going to actually have a private table. We haven't determined that yet, so we'll probably just converge there and after dinner on it's a week from today, and then just go from there.
that's awesome. Yeah, I'm excited. I love poker, so it'll be great. Sorry to deflect, guys. Please.
No, no, you're good. Yeah, for sure. No, it's good to have you up here.
Okay, Shapeshift is back up. Let's get a chime back in on that brain trust thing.
Shapeshift.
Wow, we lost him again.
He shape shifted right out of here again. Yeah, I don't know.
Try closing the app and then coming back on. It works for me sometimes.
Yeah,
Shapeshift.
there was people actually getting really annoyed, thinking we're doing stuff on purpose. We are not. So there's no shenanigans going on our end. So just an FYI. I got blocked by somebody who thought that two of us were actually planning and not go into his hand and everything else, and it's completely not true whatsoever. I was just completely oblivious. So don't take anything personally. We're doing our best here,
I
guys.
don't know.
Eric, did you want to chime in though?
Oh no, I'm just I'm on pins and needles for Shapeshift to come back on here. Want to see how we can
Let's
help
see
him.
how Bob's doing until he gets up here. Bob, how's it going?
Pretty good. I had a question for Grant, actually, if we can go back to his stuff while we wait for Shapeshift. So what kind of cap rate are you going for? Obviously, you're buying the real estate at a really good uh, price point, but like, what are you guys doing there? Like, how do you calculate that?
Yeah, so we look for a 5 cap. You know, again, this is institutional quality. It's mostly Miami, Fort Lauderdale. Um, we're looking at a deal in Chicago right now, a trophy asset in Chicago. Uh, but I'm looking for guys that are in trouble, right? Like not, the property's not in trouble, and the owner's not a bad guy. It's just his debt's due. And let's say he's got a bunch of debt on a deal, and the cap rate's not going to reflect the deal itself. It's going to be the replacement cost that really reflects the deal. We bought $600 million worth of deals last year from an insurance company, and those deals should have sold for $900 million. I literally bought him what they paid for him 10 years ago is what I paid for him. And this is institutional quality, great frontage, great cities, all Fort Lauderdale. They didn't want to sell it, but they had to clean their books up. And then we'll add Bitcoin back to that replacement cost, and we'll still get a 4.5%, maybe a 5% return without any rent growth. With rent growth, we'll go.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, with rent
I
growth,
was just
with the Bitcoin. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna ask what your pitch is to these people. Like, are you positioning it in a certain way? Is it that they want exposure to Bitcoin, or are you just saying like, hey, we're
No,
de-risking Bitcoin, or
no,
to
I don't
Bitcoiners,
use
are
it.
you saying we're de-risking real estate?
No, I don't say I'm de-risking anything. I say, guys, I'm buying. Let's say the deals. This is a piece of real estate I'm buying, and I want you to know I'm adding Bitcoin to the purchase. Well, what does that mean? Well, that means you can either participate in the Bitcoin or not. What does that cost me? Something. Doesn't cost you anything. So, do you want to be exposed to the Bitcoin on the upside? The downside is, we're going to use our cash flow to buy more of this Bitcoin. So you can check a box, and the box says "Pay me in cash flow," or it says "Pay me on." I want my cash flow to buy Bitcoin. So it's your choice. What are you doing, Grant? Well, I don't need any more cash flow. I got plenty. So I'm going to go ahead and check the Bitcoin box. But either way, you're exposed to the Bitcoin because when I bought it, we added Bitcoin. So you could still have exposure to the Bitcoin. It's going to cash flow 4%, and you can take your cash dividend, or you can just trust me with your cash, and I'm going to go purchase Bitcoin with it.
So the reason I like it is, well, I'm just comparing it to other options that are in the market right now. So if you look at like River, for example, you can, stick some cash with River and get 3.8% in Bitcoin. But with yours, the underlying is real estate, which is probably going to keep better pace with money printing and inflation than just having cash sitting in an account at River. So I
Yeah,
think the cool part is you get the access to the real estate.
you get that, and you get access to the depreciation. So saving money doesn't come with a write-off. Real estate comes with great write-offs.
Yeah,
I
go
think you
ahead,
need to
Plus the
Charlie.
cash
explain. Can
flow.
you explain that a little bit? Because most folks will not understand what tax loss harvesting is.
Yeah, tax loss is on a $100 million asset. I'm going to probably write $40 million off when I purchase it. Well, and with Trump, it could go higher than that because he's going to bring back the depreciation laws. So again, that's why you want to buy. Me putting money in an account and getting paid 3.8%. I'm like, dude, I get no write-offs. I have no asset backing my cash. With the real estate, I get the benefit of the real estate benefiting from inflation. I get the rent increases that increase the cash flow. I have my cash flow and my tenants buying my Bitcoin. I'm getting the offset. I pay no taxes on the income from the real estate that buys my Bitcoin because my tax loss offsets the income. I get the benefits of, two world-class assets that should benefit from the printing presses. And Bitcoin
Grant,
just
let me stop
provides.
you real quick. Can you define
Yeah.
something for me? Do you have like IDC, like intangible, or is this just a portion? What can you actually count?
What can I count? I didn't follow that
Yeah, so
question.
like in drilling, in oil and gas and drilling, I can fully fully discount or fully depreciate the drilling costs, like 100%.
Oh,
So in real estate, I wonder what can you do in real estate? I just didn't know
yeah.
that. That's
Well, yeah, you can, when the 100% depreciate, accelerated depreciation come back, the kitchens, the floors, the roofs, the gutters, like on $100 million complex, I can't depreciate 100% of it. Can't depreciate the land. Okay. And there's schedules for different stuff. Like the roof might have a different.
Did we lose Grant, or is that me?
I think it's just Grant.
He
now he
got
cut.
he got shapeshifted.
I can't believe we're getting shape shifted. That's our new term.
Guys, just so you understand what he's talking about, like this is one of the main reasons people invest in oil and gas wells. You would say, why in the world would anybody try to put in $50,000 in a deal where they can lose 100% of the investment? And the reason is because 100% of the intangible drilling costs can be fully deducted away. And if you hit, you just count that against your profits. So it's a really powerful tool to be able to do this tax loss harvesting in real estate. I didn't know you could do it.
Yeah, and what he think he was about to say is, yeah, there's a depreciation schedule. What he's talking more about commercial, so there's like a 39-year schedule, but certain things that you're implementing, you can put together sort of an amortization schedule on a different timeline. Whether it's a roof or the doors or whatever, and you can also bring a lot of that forward. There's crafty ways to slide your tax losses all over the place, which is why so many people use real estate.
Yeah,
Charlie,
they're proposing to bring that into the entertainment business as well, with that 100% tariff on foreign movies stuff that Trump talked about a couple of weeks ago. That was in response to a proposal that would have pulled forward all of the production cost for a given movie or TV series into the year that it's deployed. So you could pull that you could have that write off in the year of production, similar to the way Grant was talking about. And then if you add Bitcoin to that stack, you really have like several different ways to take advantage of different tax treatment of different pieces of the entire investment enterprise. It's quite interesting.
so when you get those actors talking with those funny voices, that's a foreign film.
Yes, exactly. Only if it's Italian or Eastern European, though.
Okay, just checking. Hey, Charlie.
Yo, I was gonna ask a question to Grant. It's he's not here now, so it's not applicable. But one thing I wondered, when you're really winning in a certain industry, doing well, pivoting to something that is especially a little bit novel to his industry and most of them, I just wondered what that definable quality for him that made him feel convicted enough that he would start putting. Because I know Gary. I mean, we spent time together, and Gary obviously is like,
It's called your brother. It's called your brother, and your brother, and your brother, and he doesn't stop.
yeah,
So I'm sure
I
your
doubt
brother had
it's
something.
just. I mean, Gary, loves Bitcoin, but I don't think that Grant doesn't seem like the blind type where he has blind trust. He seems calculated.
Well, Yeah, to that point, I thought it was interesting. Yesterday, on Spaces, Grant came on and he said something that kind of applies to this. He was talking about, probably for the last 10, 20 years, his mantra is kind of be like, stay in your lane, focus in on this one thing, stay in your lane, stay in your lane. And now he's kind of like, hey, like expand your horizons a little bit. What is your lane? And does it exist at it as it is currently for the next 10 or 15 years? And I don't want to speak for Grant because because he's still in real estate, he still likes real estate. I put up a post today, and I'll throw it up in the nest just about kind of the state of real estate as it exists right now. Like the reason we're at 6.5x income to housing ratio is because we lost our sound money and all of the capital flowed into hard assets, one of them being real estate, right? So if I'm a big time real estate investor and I kind of see what's coming down the pipe here and I understand Bitcoin, there's a serious threat to the investment premium of that industry from an asset that does everything that real estate does, but better, right? And so if by some, you know, if I think Grant understands it pretty well. He's like, hey, look, like if this is a threat to my industry, if I combine both of them, then the threat is eliminated, right? And I don't know to what extent. I don't want to speak for him, of course, but I do feel like real estate is one of the biggest industries currently out there that Bitcoin is a threat to because of how inflated the prices are due to that investment premium. So yeah, I don't want to speak for him, but that's probably what I would be thinking. Yeah, go ahead,
And
Eric.
also,
Oh, go ahead.
Charlie. Oh, sorry, I was just going to tack on to that for to answer Charlie's question, because I've been listening to Grant and Gary since they started to come into the space, and we're starting to question everything. And it really is similar to a lot of us. They were coming in. It was just a trade. It was a speculative asset. They want to make money. They're very opportunistic brothers. I don't say that negatively. Like they really glom on to like, how can I what's the cheat code for the system? And they saw crypto in general is that Gary was doing a lot of work, and I think he was almost full time, just hanging out here in spaces. And to his credit, he did the work. He's read dozens of books, gone on podcasts, and he's still getting deeper and deeper there. But I do believe he intimately understands Bitcoin. Um, Grant, is probably one of the most well known real estate developers out there, at least in the media. He's had TV shows about him, documentaries about him. He's done those late night real estate courses, and so like it or not, he's out there and sort of a bullseye for people, both good and bad. He's kind of like the epitome of the real estate bro, and with his books and courses and all that stuff. But so I think he's slowly coming around, but he still, I think, sees Bitcoin as a trade. I don't think he's there yet, but
He's
he's doing the backwards math, and which a lot of us do. And he's like, oh my god, had I just bought Bitcoin rather than this property, or had I just done this rather than that. And now commercial real estate developers like himself are having lots of problems right now, because a lot of these deals you're doing like 5 and 7 year balloon arms and loans. And so as those loans come due, or as they have to refinance, from these 2.5% up to like 8 or 9%, they're getting clobbered. And he was referring to that a little bit with some of these multifamily, like Class B syndicate deals, where you're supposed to come in and out. You come in, you turn over the place, and you exit in like 5 years. You sell to an institutional um, hedge fund or something, but now there's no meat on the bone anymore because they have to refinance. So
Terrence, let's face it though, like, you gotta kind of understand where he's at. Like if his whole identity um is wrapped up in real estate, and that'd be really difficult.
oh,
Like
and
if you'd run,
ridiculously successful, right? Like
yeah,
he's very fiat favored. He's under the
right.
money printer because he gets the cheap credit. Absolutely.
Yeah, and if you're spending all this time running seminars, like that's how millions of people know you. Then to say, "Oh yeah, I'm done with all that. I'm going to go in all into Bitcoin." So I agree with you on the assessment, but I also don't blame him to some extent. I mean, he's been ultra successful, and so I think it is a difficult thing. And you don't have to be 100% allocated to Bitcoin to be a Bitcoiner.
Yeah, you guys should go watch. You can find it online. Undercover Billionaire. It was a big Fox show It's him. It's all about him. They drop him down into an unknown town. They strip him of his identity, strip him of his credit cards, and he has to, basically trade his way out of there. And
All right,
he,
so you have a shot at that one. Didn't you have a production? Was that a different show?
no, I
Remember you?
was offered to show run and EP that, but the schedules just didn't work out. But yeah,
Yeah, I
oh,
mean, I think from listening to Grant kind of develop more of a Bitcoin strategy over the last year, it seemed like initially, and maybe it's even his main motivation to actually dig in here, is he saw an ever growing value sitting there with potential to actually, he wanted to tap into that. And then as his education about Bitcoin grew, his conviction did as well. And from my perspective, it seems like Gary probably has maybe a bigger Bitcoin conviction, but Grant's definitely educated himself and done the work to realize what it is. And there's a lot of people that are throwing out questions about, why. And from my perspective as somebody in Bitcoin, I think this is a great tool to actually make people realize what Bitcoin really is. Because right now they're trying to minimize their risk by being involved in these real estate deals that they think that can create value over time and be guaranteed, blah, 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 blah. But in time, they'll realize that actually their Bitcoin performed a lot better, when they crunch the numbers. And so, from my perspective, it's a good way to actually show people that aren't interested in Bitcoin that, hey, over time, this Bitcoin allocation will actually perform better than your real estate did. So to me,
Yeah,
it's a
and
win-win.
there's this built-in idea too that if somebody that successful is including Bitcoin in his real estate deals, then it's probably a good idea for me to participate in that.
So hearing you, Lauren, talk about
Eric, I
that
see your hand.
is
Eric.
Yeah, guys, I think it's important to look at real estate for what real estate really is. We look at it as an asset game. It's a collateralized debt game. So the more strong and clean collateral you add to a balance sheet, the more effective debt you get, the cheaper rates you get, the more frequently and with better speed that you get loans. That is the real estate game. It is a lending business. Even if you're doing a multifamily in cash for the investment, you're still banking on 12% appreciation over 3 years to refinance, pay off the investors, give it 2 more years of rent collection, and sell. So it is designed for that. So Grant is getting ahead of the curve. And like I've said, I've personally talked to banks that are going to be implementing these strategies for at least commercial properties by the end of the year. And one other thing I want to bring up here is Last Coin Standing is down there listening. By the way, great account to follow, great Substack. He pointed out a mistake I made earlier. If we're going to get to the truth, we have to admit when we're wrong. He is correct. I don't think stablecoins will disintermediate credit cards. I think they will disintermediate debit card transactions. So thank you, Last Coin, for that comment earlier. It's important that we acknowledge when we miss something and learn from it.
BitPetro.
Yeah, something you said, Lauren, earlier really kind of hit a aha moment in me. So one of the things that was really big about Venezuela when I left was that real estate was imploding along with the Bolivar. And so what people would do is they would buy houses in credit and then take out notes in U.S. credit because the note in the Venezuelan bolivar would melt away relative to the other cash, and they would be able to pay for the first note with the second note. And it just occurred to me, hearing you guys, that's exactly what you can do with Bitcoin. If you are just wise enough to just follow Grant's little game right there and just say, listen, I'm going to, and this is to Cosmo and mine's old conversation, I'm going to go find tax sale properties because they're undervalued, right? You're going to a tax sale because somebody's not paying their taxes, and you can enter the auction and buy that property undervalued, i.e., the game that Mr. Cardone is explaining you how he does, and you take the note out for, let's say, 100% of the value of that property because you're going to bid 70%, and you use 30% of the rest of that note to buy you some Bitcoin. And good gosh, if that's not the exact same thing people were doing in Venezuela.
That's actually fascinating. I didn't know that was part of the demise in that area, but that totally makes sense. just kind of using that arbitrage. That's super interesting.
Should we move to wrap this one since we have a nice little lull right here? Terrence, you around, buddies?
I'm around. I'm waiting for you, Daddy.
Ooh, I like it when you call me daddy. There's other people that I've been getting DMs from that don't appreciate that. They believe it's quite homoerotic, and they are not at all impressed.
Well,
There's
Charlie
nothing
was about to
there's nothing
speak.
gay about saying daddy to
Charlie,
another
jump in here
guy.
and save us, buddy. Yeah, no, it's
There's
yeah,
nothing gay about that.
especially
Come on.
when he takes the belt off and starts snapping it. It's even worse. So
Oh,
yeah,
well, that
uh,
might be a little gay. I hear.
just a little, just a bit.
So no,
Anyway,
if I was to pivot, to be honest,
Bitcoin.
things that I'm seriously interested in, I'm a hardcore Bitcoiner, is like a lot of
Yeah,
these Bitcoin instruments that are coming out.
Charlie, can I interrupt
Yeah,
you,
of
buddy?
course.
Charlie. I'm gonna just shut you down because we try to wrap these things
Mm,
at 10:30, and if you open up Pandora's box right here, we'll probably go for another half an
got
hour.
it.
And it's also a great excuse to get you back because we want to hear what you have to say.
Got it.
So please, 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 please remember and come back, and then we'll lead off with your sentiment there. But Terrence usually takes us around the horn and gives people a chance to say their last words. If you want to throw that out there, but don't trigger anybody to start talking because honestly, we've started winding a show and then just thrown a whole new subject out there, and it goes for another 45 minutes. And Terrence has movies to direct and produce and all this jazz. Cosmo has things to do that I'm not allowed to say because it's very important and has to do with the Russian space people, I believe. I don't know. Anyway, sorry, Terrence, back to you.
Yeah, sorry about that, Charlie. Lauren has very heavy filters in this space,
I
so
do. I do.
yeah, we're censored all the time from Daddy Lauren.
I've been blocked for censorship and I didn't even know I was censoring. Sorry.
Yeah, well, this is why I want to stick with Bitcoin and Sats. Your idea for Bitcoin and Little Laurens is not going to work for me.
Hey, Terrence, that whole
What?
subject, it's we already went through this. What was that, like 7 years ago, where we did the whole Sats versus Bits thing, and it feels
Yeah,
like deja vu to me.
yeah. I get it. If I was first coming in, I would want it. I get it. But once you're here, it's like, oh, yeah, no, we don't need that. Let's see. How about you? Well, gosh, where did the stage go? There's two people here.
No, there's four. Oh
Oh,
wait, Petrol's here, Bob's here, Charlie's here, Eric's here.
yeah, we all just talked.
So we can just end it now.
Yeah.
Shut it down.
Maybe we go to Bit Petrol. He has some parting words for the folks.
Sure. Come see us live if you are in the DFW area. Eric is going to join me, and I'm hosting my monthly meetup. So come to Funky Town. Come check out what For Bitcoin is and break out from the fiat matrix.
I love that, man. I love meetups. They're great. Bob?
Thanks for having me as always. Stay humble, stack sats. Have a great Tuesday.
Bob runs a great space, the Bitcoin Veterans. What you guys start at like 7 Pacific time, correct?
Yep,
In
10
the
10
AM.
a.m.
Okay.
Eastern. Yep.
Yeah, it's awesome. I've listened in and been a guest. Great, great space. Eric?
I think these guys covered it all. Keep life simple. Do the right
Super.
things.
Eric's the guy who is pretty much the guy who picked up the ball when we fumbled it and found us a venue and whatnot in Vegas for our party. So hats off, shout out, Eric. Charlie, wonderful for you to join today. We usually give the mic to people to have parting words, so we yield the mic to you, sir.
No, I appreciate it. I think anything that proliferates Bitcoin is good, so enjoy the conversations. You guys are so sweet too and kind and like super down to earth about the conversation. So it doesn't feel so like at Wolf, like very often and not the conversation is very professionally run. So there's not lull. It's not like, which isn't a bad thing, but it's cool. It's like an at home atmosphere. So thank you guys.
So Charlie, what you're saying is we're unprofessional
No,
here,
that's
correct?
not.
We're a Barca lounger, is what he's saying.
Yeah.
uh, uh,
Oh, we tease. No,
How about
I
you,
like the Wolf
Cosmo?
Spaces. I enjoy the Wolf Spaces. I just wanted to throw that out there, and I look forward to meeting you guys. So it's gonna be fun to hang out with you guys in Vegas. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say we're on the precipice of greatness, guys. I think that these next few years is gonna be incredible. Just don't sell your Bitcoin, man. Do anything you can. Stay solvent. Get an extra job. Whatever you got to do to stack some sats. But I think these next few years are gonna blow everybody's minds. I don't think that we're prepared. So I'm really excited about the years to come.
And don't get
Nice.
shape shifted.
I love that we have that new term. Lauren, for my quick closing thoughts, what is Bitcoin? Does it exist? And what is money? Let's quickly discuss.
Yes, sir. Let's open up that Pandora's box. In 37 seconds or less, please. Go.
All right, Mike is all yours.
Yeah, so I think I always want to close these with the most important stuff, which is kindness. And I think Charlie alluded to, or actually spoke directly to that, which is love and kindness and hope and all the good stuff. And enjoy your life. It is now, it is in this moment. So be kind to other people. Forgiveness is amazing. I'm not an expert, nor do I proclaim to be perfect, but man, I strive every day to just love the people closest to me, be kind to people, and I think that's one of the reasons I like Bitcoin because to me it is the best shot I see at a loving, hopeful future, and so I really hope it works out because future generations, the way we're currently heading, the trajectory is not looking good for them. So I have a lot of confidence in Bitcoin. I've spent a ton of time studying it, and I really hope it, to me, seems like it has one of the best shots at actually making a positive change for the future. So, with that, love y'all. Excited to hang out and just, in real life, just hang with cool people. So, take care, guys. Until later.